Hey, folks, we're back.
Yes, we are. We're back
Kevin and Bud,
after being gone for a while. I guess you said you were out of pocket for a little bit, and I was.
You were out of pocket.
I was out of pocket some too.
So
yeah,
we just never kind of conversed, did we? And all
No.
that. Yeah.
No.
So happy 4th of July
Yeah.
to everybody. That's a big deal.
Did you have a good time?
I did. Yeah. Did you?
Oh, we
heard
we
you
have
blew-
a big time
You blew
up
your
in the
mountain
mountains.
up. You blew your mountain up with fireworks, right?
Yeah, exactly. We maybe we may or may not cross the state line, and may not buy stuff that may or may not be legal in this state, and
Well, everybody else does it too. Yeah, we were everybody
and
else.
we have a big to do.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of eating, there's a lot of fireworks, there's a lot of family, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of fishing.
Good, a lot of fishing. Good, yeah,
For me, at least. Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
My granddaughter asked, "said aren't the fireworks, are they illegal?" Because she saw them going everywhere
Yeah,
at the
right.
beach, right? And my wife said, "Honey, there's just not enough policemen to even begin to deal with this problem." So
Right.
anyway, it just we just that night, and that was
Yeah.
it. 4th of July.
Oh, you just said, well, up in the mountains, let's see. They did it the 4th, the 5th, and then we did it the 6th.
Oh, wow!
So,
y'all had the
it was,
whole day to
it,
yourself.
yeah,
for y'all.
it kind of goes, and then there was another person down the river who was doing it. And
Yeah.
So
Good for
anyway,
y'all.
but it was fun.
Good.
But I'm
mean,
glad
had
to be
a blast.
back to
I am
this.
too. Yeah, I missed it. I did.
Man, there's been a lot that has kind of occurred
It
over the
has.
last month
And
or
we,
so.
and we got a number of topics.
Yeah.
Not for today.
no,
but for
no.
subsequent.
Yeah.
But there'll
I'll-
probably be more by
and
the
they
time we
will-
get to those.
Yeah, they're gonna cross and
Yeah.
all that type of stuff. Did you watch the debate?
Actually, some of it. Those things, I just, I have a hard time with them. Did you watch it?
Yeah, my wife and I sat down and watched it from beginning to end.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And when it started,
Mhm.
you can ask my wife, my mouth just opened. I could not believe that they sent him out, and I'm
Mhm.
talking about Joe Biden,
Right.
sent him out with like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Yeah, that's
bad
what I
right off
heard.
the bat. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my,
Yeah.
we're in trouble.
Yeah, my mom was in the house because she was with us on vacation, and so she watched it, and I kind of and my daughter watched it as well, and so we kind of got some reports from them while we were watching. I think I might have been watching Copa America or
Okay.
something Euro 2024
There you
soccer
go. Yeah.
tournament video or DVD DVR runs of them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, by the way, this is the 12-2 podcast. In case
12-2
I don't think
podcast.
we announced that again.
Yeah, we
based
haven't-
off of Romans 12:2.
Right.
We're not going to be conformed to this world, but we're transformed by the renewing of the mind, and that renewal comes from actual learning
Yeah.
what God says about how we should live in Scripture.
So the whole idea that when God moves, he moves in our hearts, but he also moves in our minds to kind of help those two things kind of work together to align. How many times a day do we see examples of just that, of people not getting it, right? Of just the feeling kind of thing without looking at the alignment with the mindset,
the
and
mindset,
the
yeah.
thinking,
Yeah.
right? It just seems, Kevin, to me in the past couple of months, it seems like every day I'm seeing like glaring examples of situations where people are just not putting those things together. And
Right, where we're acting and feeling
Yeah.
how we feel rather than I would call it capital T truth.
yeah,
I mean, and we see that example seem to always go back to Genesis, with Cain and Abel.
yeah,
Cain felt like his sacrifice
yeah.
should be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And God had said, no, I need a blood sacrifice. And Cain gets so upset about it, he acts on his feelings,
Yeah.
and it ends up with the death of Abel.
He takes out his brother. I
Yeah.
mean, think how that works. And it's just amazing, and I see it all the time. So,
Yeah.
so it just makes me appreciate it. So, man, we got to, this hiatus can't last too long. We got to
No.
get back to this, right?
Right.
Got to get back to it.
Right.
So tell us, you got some good things
Well,
that are pretty compelling.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, as we are moving into the political season, it has started and it is upon us, and
Yeah.
we just can't avoid it.
Yeah,
so,
no, you just got to.
and especially since we had the first presidential debate, and I'm just going to be honest. I mean, on one side, we do have somebody who is in cognitive decline. There
Mhm.
are some definite issues physically and mentally that happen
Sure.
to all of us because we are human beings.
Yeah, it's part
and
of,
we're going to decline and eventually pass away. That's
Yeah.
just the nature of human life. It is a temporal life here on earth. So on one side you have that, President Biden.
Yeah.
And then on the other side you have somebody who is very bombastic, who we would not
probably not be best friends with.
probably not be best friends with, but also who has some character issues,
Yeah,
definitely,
sure.
and has enjoyed the excesses that the world has to offer and all its
Sure.
sin. I mean,
Yeah.
we wouldn't ask him to pastor a church or be a Sunday school teacher.
Probably not.
And,
Probably not. Although he probably thinks he could do it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But anyway.
He would be the best. That'd be the best.
But that kind of leads to one of the things we're going to talk about, not today, but one of the things that I suggested to you was one of the things that I think really impressed upon me recently is the reality, and just hearing, particularly with this with Trump because of that, right? So many people comment on his personality through the years,
Right?
And they don't think I'd like that individual and all that good stuff,
Right.
But it's kind of like I just kind of get the feeling that when we reduce our voting choices to people that we personally like, I just kind of think that's really self-centered.
Yeah.
It's a really self-centered approach. You know what I mean? And
It's not a very good way to walk, and we'll walk down that path probably
we'll get
later.
there in another podcast soon, but that's a big deal.
But today we just kind of want to think about how do we think biblically and as believers. How do we kind of make this two-person choice? I mean, for all practical purposes, I know there are other people running, but for all practical purposes, it's a two-horse race. And should we as believers, first of all, be involved?
Right.
And number two, if we are going to be involved, what's our choice?
And how do we go about making it?
And how do we go about
what
making
are our
it?
criteria?
Right. Yeah.
So go ahead.
So, well, I mean, my question to you, as a pastor, and I have my opinion on this, but should we as believers, as Christians, be involved in the political process?
Yeah, I think God calls us as followers of Christ to live holistically. Okay. To live in the culture, right?
Right.
And I think that is a natural part of what we're called to do, whether it be to candidate, right? Whether it be to just simply participate by voting, by getting involved, figuring out, which is something else we're going to talk about. How do you decide, right? And then get involved. And I think that God calls us to look to vote in ways that are in alignment with the fundamentals of His Word. I do.
Yeah.
And you and I both have some red line issues, right? Where
Correct.
we're not going to cross. And of course, to me, I know abortion is one of those for both of us, right? That
life.
may be the one, right? The sanctity of life. And that's a biblical concept. And so I think personally, as a pastor, and I always have, that we're called to participate. I heard somebody say that, I've heard it said that, but we're called to be like of the world and not in the world. And that was their rationalization as a Christian for not voting. And I'm like, whoa, where does that come from? How does that work?
Yeah, I know that there is that camp. There's kind of two ditches on either side that you can go to. But the one side is like, hey, as a Christian, I'm not, we're not of this world, and my home is in heaven, and and I'm a sojourner in this place. So therefore, I don't need to be part of the public square.
So what other processes and other things in this life are you not going to do because of that?
Because you have a job,
but
right?
You have a job. I'm not going to work, right?
You're not going to spend money.
I'm not going to spend money. I'm not going to participate in the. I'm going to go back to the barter economy, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, because that's what. Where do you stop?
Right.
And that's why. And see, the reason for that is why. That's why we've got to understand that there are principles that are broad, right? And we have to make sure that we're thinking in terms of the broader principles that are in alignment with God's Word, because those principles fit a lot of different components of life.
You're right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and we as Americans, and we just celebrated July 4th.
Sure.
We as Americans have this. We're part of a government, a participatory government.
Right, and we need to be thankful for that.
Correct. Which means we have the opportunity to participate in that government.
Great point.
And we have a voice.
Great point. Yeah.
As a citizen, we have a voice in that government. Now, someone who lives in a totalitarian regime,
Right.
North Korea, would not be in a participatory government. So
Right.
therefore, they would not necessarily
Right.
live or participate in the political process
Mhm.
the same way that someone born in the United States can and should participate. And
Great point.
And my feeling on this, especially as a Christian and as a, and looking at this biblically, we're called to do good works.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
and you look at places like Matthew, where God's talking, God's talking about, when I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was hungry, you fed me, and all this stuff. And they said, when did we do that? And, and he goes, the least of these.
Yeah.
And you get the idea that we as believers should be making the world around us,
Right.
our world, whether it's our family, whether it's our place of business, whether it's our church, whether it's even maybe our local government or our neighborhood, a better place.
Yeah. No, it's great.
We
Absolutely.
should do what we can to stand against evil and the wickedness that is in this world. And I'm sorry, but some of that can be held in check by placing good people in positions
Right.
of authority.
Right. And a good corollary to that is the fact that government, and you mentioned North Korea, you mentioned a lot of places, and even to a little bit of a degree here, government is generally seen as coercive in most countries in the world,
Right.
Ours included. There is a large faction of the population here who would say, okay, but you can't legislate morality while at the same time they're working to legislate immorality.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Well,
and
you
using
legislate
the power of the law.
Right. They say you can't legislate morality, but you legislate according to your morality.
To your own personal, exactly.
Right,
Which
I mean-
kind of goes to the
Right.
call it immorality, right?
Right. But an
that's what it
immorality is a morality that you are legislating.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so,
you can't have it both ways.
you don't get it. You're right. Even, I mean, yes, of course, that you can pass a law that, is your registration for your car necessarily a moral issue. I don't know. I mean, if you get into, is taxation a moral issue, then I guess
Yeah.
it's a moral issue. I don't know,
Yeah.
but whether life or, whether we are making a culture that promotes family
Mhm.
or denigrates family,
Mhm.
those are moral issues.
And those are the primary moral issues, really.
Right.
If you get those right, the other things like taxation and that kind of thing, that can get some resolution. Right?
Correct.
If we kind of get these priorities in order.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
Yeah. So as we look at and what we need to realize as believers,
Mhm.
I mean, with the Noahic covenant, God established governments,
He
and
did.
governments are part of the human experience,
Mhm.
whether we like it or not.
Mhm.
It was after the flood that God said,
Mhm.
"Hey, I just watched, I just watched the human race or the human beings become so wicked and
Yeah.
debauchery, participate in
Yeah.
all types of debauchery,
Yeah.
that I destroyed them.
Yeah.
Now with you, Noah, I'm going to establish human government to at least have a check on evil."
Right.
I mean, regardless, again, whether it's North Korea, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, or whether it's here,
Mhm.
all governments derive their authority from God, whether they recognize it or not.
Right, exactly. And when they don't, which is usually the case,
Right.
it becomes very secular, it becomes very humanistic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting that before God, through Noah, through the Noahic covenant, instituted human government, that he would start over with Noah himself, and that he would wipe out the sin that occurred, all the, and it. We can't even begin to acknowledge or even imagine how heinous that
Well, it
sin
said,
was.
what was it? Just that the evil was in the heart of man
Yeah,
continually.
continually.
And you
Yeah.
know, I think that's maybe one of the reasons, you know, after the flood, you know, human life got truncated.
Exactly.
It went from 900 years
Yeah.
down to, if you live past 80, you know, you're blessed type deal. And I
Yeah.
think part of that was in God's plan, because just think about how much evil you can accomplish if you got 900 years to dwell on being evil.
Yeah, if in fact that is the way your heart is
It's
wired.
wired.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
And so I
So-
just think, as the human race as a
Yeah.
whole, you know, you just look at it, when you have 80 years, you know, you can get into some bad stuff, you know.
How much worse is it going to be when
Right.
you multiply that times 10, right?
Right. I mean, that's how they figured out on how to have sexual relations with demons. So, you know,
Yeah.
they had
They've-
a long time to figure it out. So,
Yeah, and somehow it worked. I mean,
Yeah.
that
So-
worked for what they were, for their immorality,
for the evil. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
for the morality. Of
I mean,
God,
well,
obviously.
and the result was, of course, God's judgment. And then that, of course, led to God saying, okay, I'm going to establish government to help place a check
Hmm.
on the evil in the world. So realizing that, regardless of whether we like it or not, if
Yeah.
we're, as being citizens of this country, I believe, as a believer,
Mhm.
that it is biblical to be involved in the political process,
Right.
at least at the bare minimum of the you know, voting. Yeah.
With,
the ballot box.
at an informed level.
At an informed level.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
I've said
definitely.
this before. One of the main problems we have with the democracy is the idea that everybody gets to do it freely. Just because you're a person and you're of a certain age,
Right.
you are able to do this, right?
Right.
There aren't really any other types of, qualifications. You were probably not going.
You don't even have to be alive in some.
In some,
areas.
you're right.
You could have already
Yeah.
passed on.
yeah. Some places like vote early, vote often. Right?
Vote often, yeah.
Yeah. So, but you would not hire a person just with no qualifications, right?
No.
That is just there as an individual.
I have.
Maybe we have. Both of us have, right? But
Right,
We
but-
make mistakes and we learn from them, right?
Yeah.
And if you're listening, that's probably not you.
Right,
So if
right,
you know
no.
us and it worked for either one of us. But that's the problem, right? Even a lot of Christians
Are ignorant
they're ignorant.
they're ignorant of the things that they are facing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like I always say, and some people just cannot stand politics, and I understand it. But
Yeah.
if you think about politics, all politics is just policy. It's just a discussion of policy.
Yeah.
And the thing about policy is policy affects people.
Yeah.
It has a direct effect on how people can live their lives and do live their lives.
Mhm.
And again, I've heard it. Al Mohler talks about this. The law is a teacher, and it teaches people,
Yeah.
their morality. You think about the Supreme Court decision
Mhm.
about marriage,
Mhm. Mhm.
and before marriage, it was 70-30 supported.
You're talking about before the
Before
decision.
a Begerfeld decision,
Yeah.
Before the decision, the Supreme Court said that homosexual marriage is equivalent to heterosexual marriage, and you can't discriminate against it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it was like 70-30, 69-31, whatever the case is. It was that people believed that marriage was between a man and a woman. After that decision,
Yeah.
it has completely switched to it's like 70% say, hey, it can be between a man and a man, woman and a woman. And it's, like 31% or whatever the case is. But the numbers actually flip because the law is a teacher.
Yeah.
And so, again, that goes back to the importance.
But it doesn't mean it's a good teacher.
No, it doesn't.
Obviously.
But
Let's
it
make that
teaches.
point.
Yeah.
Right. It does teach.
But it teaches regardless.
And that's a situation where many Christians, their belief, or professing Christians,
Right.
their belief probably flipped because the law.
Because the
flipped.
law flipped.
And
Yeah.
that's really the whole idea of a secular humanistic worldview is government, which is man God ordained. Right, God ordained, man run, right?
yeah.
If man so chooses to
Right.
leave God out of the equation, and they follow it because it's the easy
Right.
thing to do. You made a comment, which is I want to go back to. Just I think it's really interesting. You said that people don't like politics, but you made the point exactly. what it is. It's a discussion of policy, right?
Right.
Trying to find the best for hopefully the greater good for the larger group of people. I think, Kevin, I don't know that I fully ascribe to the idea that people don't like politics. I think that a lot of people don't like politics. That's kind of the front. I think it is the conflict
Correct.
that comes with disagreement around politics,
Right.
which is so front and center in our world. I think that's what people don't like. That's for the most
right.
part. Not
Yeah,
everybody,
yeah,
but I think that's it. It's the
That's
conflict.
Right. It's the conflict that's going to occur when you take a stand one way or the other.
Right.
You know, the tribalism and the. I mean, let's be honest. There was a time in our country that we all kind of. There were some things that we all agreed upon,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
patriotism,
Yeah.
you know, the family was important and things
Not
like
that long ago.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And things like that. Children should be protected. Parents have the right to, you know, teach their children, you know, those types of things. And we could all agree on those. We may disagree on how that was done, but at the end of the day, we would all claim to be Americans. You saw kind of that spirit during, you know, when the towers got
Sure.
you know,
Oh,
hit.
yeah,
Everybody,
absolutely.
it didn't matter. They reached across the aisle. And we've gone so far past that because you know, to now, you know, there's huge divide between the two political spheres.
Oh, yeah.
Basically,
Crazy.
you know, conservative and progressives. There's just this huge, and there's no common ground.
Right.
And this isn't the first time that we've seen this in our country, and it seems to center around a big moral issue.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the last time we couldn't find a common ground. We ended up, you know, fighting a civil war, and the common ground was: do human beings have the right to own other human beings?
Yeah.
You
No,
know, and that was a moral issue
Yeah.
that we could not find common ground on. That we had to basically fight a war over.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's what we think of as the Civil War,
Right.
And that's destroyed so much of our fabric. Yeah, I mean, this is a really tough place to be, and this chasm between political sides, I would say, and I think you'd probably agree with me too, as we move forward. It seems that both of those schools of thought, belief, progressivism, conservatism, for the most part, they tend to be drifting even further leftward.
Yeah.
Even what we refer to as conservative today is not what we would have thought.
Conservatism was
take for example just the Republican Party, which we tend to associate Republican conservatism as being closely related,
Right.
although that's a stretch.
Right. It's a
stretch.
generalization. I mean, conservatism, I mean, I think it's important that we define those words. You know, conservatism is, and you see this across Western civilization, the Conservative Party is typically the party that wants to conserve what has worked in the past,
Right.
and wants to keep that as
and the preponderance of that has been based upon biblical truth.
correct.
Yeah.
The Judeo-Christian principles, you know, we want to conserve that, you know, marriages between a man and one man, one woman for one lifetime. We want to conserve this idea of promoting a household, a family unit as the basis for building of societies and building of cultures. We want to conserve this idea that, you know, that women and our parents, I should say,
Right.
should be the primary, you know, caretakers of children, you know, whether it's a father and mother, you know, whatever the case is, however that works.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, you know, you have, because I don't even think we can call them liberals anymore. It's mostly progressivism, which
Right.
is Marxism, and which again is the oppressor-oppressed, you know, conflict, which has to do with intersectionality. Critical theory has the whole idea of creating a utopia here on earth where it's not about equality, it's about equity. In other words, everybody's the same, regardless of whether people are the same or not.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that just everybody's the same, which, you know, in math class you learned is the lowest common denominator. So look at you know,
That's where we're taking
that's
everything.
where you would take everything to make
Yeah.
everything equitable.
Yeah, and that's
You know.
why, and that's why so many people, everything is dumbed down,
Right.
right? Everything is dumbed down. Whatever you've got that's a dysfunction or a problem, et cetera, that defines you, rather than the things that you do with success and your
Right.
strengths. It's our weaknesses now that tend to define us, because you're exactly right. We're trying to find that common denominator, the lowest one.
The lowest one, right?
There's another, the highest, but there's the lowest, and that's the one that we're settling for, and that's the one we're looking at these
Right.
days. And like you said, the whole Marxist way of progressivism, all those things as you described, conservatism, because I tend to agree that conservatism without biblical values, to me, that's not conservatism.
Right. You lose. Conservatism without biblical morality will not be conservative long.
No,
let me put
won't.
it that way.
Exactly.
So
it will always continue to drift more and more leftward. So true conservatism today remains biblical, even though, for example, there was language in the Republican Party platform,
for
this year.
40 years.
It
was 40 years of pro-life.
Yeah,
that's been stripped out,
taken out.
Yeah,
and I understand the point about being left to the states. I like federalism. I like the idea of the autonomy of states.
Right,
but yet.
And we're going to deal with that late. I mean, we're going to deal with that on probably the next episode, because we're running out of time.
Oh, yeah.
Because I do want to talk about how I think that, the overturn of Roe v. Wade has now forced people's true colors, and a lot of people who were really brave, as long as Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, are now just cowards.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, good. Yeah, that'd be a good one. I look forward to that one. Yeah, we got some good stuff to talk about.
Right. And I'm looking, and we have 3 minutes left, and really haven't even gotten to the point of how do we choose who we vote for. And so
we're going to try to get to that place.
we're going to try to at least get there, because I do have some ideas, but we won't get there today. But
that's okay.
Anyway, it's fun.
It's called a cliffhanger.
Right.
Okay?
There we go. We'll give you something to look forward to and be excited about.
But how can you kind of tee that up? Kind of let it, because we'll make that our next discussion. Right.
Well, I mean,
so tee it up for us so we can.
I think it kind of goes along with what you have, and especially where we find ourselves today between two. I'm going to be honest, two bad choices. But I personally, I believe, but one is worse, much worse than the other choice, and I do believe that one choice allows for the improvement of life in general, allows for the improvement of your neighbor, promotes life and some of the things that we would hold to biblically. So you have to look, you do have to, when it comes down to, as a believer, you have to look at which one, which side, basically, which party allows the most good, for the most people. And by good, I don't mean like everybody has a Lamborghini and in a mansion. What I'm talking about is the opportunity to live their lives as God has intended for us to live our lives. Remember, we're coming off a celebration of where, a bunch of guys got together, and they stated that, hey, God gave human beings rights. The rights aren't derived from a king. Our rights aren't derived from our government. They are derived from the very fact that we are a created being from God. And those rights were life, which is the most important one, because if you don't have life, you have no other rights. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that that idea of liberty, to be able to be what God has asked, has laid in your heart to be, to have that freedom to be able to do that. And of course, the pursuit of happiness is not what we would think of it today, because words kind of change their meaning, but that idea of being what gives us satisfaction,
And so we can generally agree we are to participate as Christ followers.
Yes, we are to participate in government. We are to render the things to Caesar, the things that are Caesar's. And part of that is participating in a participatory government.
There you go. And the next time we talk, we're going to talk about just how to do that.
How we can do that, especially facing what we're going to face in November.
So don't forget to be with us next time.
Right.
All right. Good stuff.
Like us, love us,
Yeah.
Tell your friends, and we're back.
Yeah, we're
So-
back. 12-2 Podcast. Take care. God bless.